my wife and I, we have 3 kids. Their ages um, 11, 8, and 2. I'm a family guy. I like to do stuff with my kids. Um, and then I like to be active. And I've always been more active person. I played baseball growing up. Now I like to, um, I play basketball in the mornings before work. I decided to go to school as well as older, older than most people do. It's kind of helped me through this because, like, I did clinical rotations in oncology units, and being able to relate to those patients more, going through it yourself is I don't know. I think it'll help me in some ways, and so I plan on um, continuing to pursue that. My name's Steven. I was diagnosed this past June of this year, with adenoid cystic carcinoma, um, in the coming from the lacrimal gland in the orbit of my eye. It was June of 2024. I started to notice a black spot in my peripheral vision. It's kind of like if you press on your eye, you can see a black spot in the opposite side. And so I don't know, I was kind of like, that's weird. So I called an ophthalmologist. I had never seen one before. So I just Googled and found the closest one and went, and they ran tests in the office, and they just said, we don't see anything. And I actually, I don't know, 10 or 12 years before, had a tear duct surgery. I had a clogged tear duct. So they had to unclog that. And so I thought it was related to that. I thought there's got to be something in my eye, because it wasn't like black spots, like floaters or anything like that. So I thought there's got to be something in my eye, and I just ignored it for the next year. The doctor just said, we don't see anything. They told me if it keeps going, to come back, and they would send me to like a retinal specialist. But yeah, I just ignored it for the next year. And then I had just graduated from nursing school. And well, when I was in nursing school, they do this thing called your last thing. Here they call it a capstone, where you do 10 shifts with the same nurse. And I was in the operating room. And so I sent a selfie to my wife. And I noticed that my eye was like lower, which scared me. So after I graduated, I had put my symptoms into ChatGPT, and it said, you should go in. So it was basically that day. It was a Sunday. I just went into the ER, and they did CT scan, MRI, and they found the tumor. But they originally told me it would be just a benign cyst, and they referred me to a oculoplastic surgeon, who then he told me the same thing. Yeah, it's probably just a cyst. But looking at the original MRI results, it actually said that they couldn't rule out ACC, but it's less than 1% of cases that have that. When I had surgery, I was just expecting it. All the doctors said it's no big deal. My doctor said, I've done this surgery hundreds of times. It's usually a cyst filled with made up of like hair and bone and stuff, and it's really nasty. He even told me, give me a picture. So when I went in for surgery, I was like, yeah, this is no big deal, and I'll be fine. But yeah, then I woke up, and the nurse practitioner who assisted in the surgery, she said, we did find cancer. We'll let you know more later. They sent it for biopsy. And so that day, that's really all I didn't know anything. I didn't know what kind of cancer it was. I didn't know anything. And I read the days following, I read like the surgical notes that or on the app that I have access to all my medical records. And they said it was invading bone, but they didn't say what kind of cancer. I guess they couldn't really until it came back from biopsy. But until the doctor called me with those results, it was just kind of a guessing game. Didn't know anything about it. When I first heard the diagnosis, I had never heard of this type of cancer, which is it's a very rare form of cancer, and so I'd never heard of it. And I did as much research. I've done a lot more since then, but that day I researched about it, and the most important thing to different survival rates and stuff is the growth pattern of the tumor. There's 3 different types, and I found out later mine is like the middle one, which is the most common. There's solid, which is the most invasive, and then there's the cribriform, which is what mine is, and then there's tubular, which is the least invasive and best prognosis, but mine's the middle one. And so, yeah, once I found out those results, it was, I don't know. After researching it, you scare yourself. You really do, because they tell you there's not much data on it, and you see all the life expectancies, and you just don't know what. I didn't know what to think, really. Sharing with my wife, I mean, she's taking it harder than anyone, which I expected, and um, she's she actually was at work, and I had to call her with the results. I didn't want to wait, and she wouldn't have wanted me to wait, so I just told her over the phone, and she's like, "I'm not looking up anything until I get home." But yeah, since then, I mean, and telling our kids, they don't really understand, so they know I have cancer, and that's about the extent of it. They've seen me do the treatments. My wife's shared videos that she's taken and pictures and stuff of like radiation and the chemo and stuff like that. When I first found out, I actually have a neighbor who's an oncologist, and I called him, um, and he's like, "I'll look into this for you." And then also my eye doctor, the surgeon who did the surgery, when he gave me the results, he said, "I'm setting up with radiation oncology, and then to get like a PET scan done to see if it's spread anywhere else." And so my neighbor, who is a medical oncologist, he kind of said, "There's not much I can do because uh, I work with chemo, and chemo doesn't work with this kind of cancer." And he said, "You'll want to see a radiation oncologist," which I had already had set up. And so I saw the radiation oncologist first, and they said it'll be 30 treatments 5 days a week. They put this mask over your face so you're in the same position every time, and then they're actually really accurate with where the radiation goes. But then my neighbor actually called me back, and he said, he said, "I talked to some colleagues at like MD Anderson and the Mayo Clinic, and they said there is a type of cancer or a type of chemo that you can try. It's shown to help in conjunction with the radiation. It's called cisplatin chemo." So I did opt to do that as well with him. And I also joined like a Facebook page of people that have the same type of cancer, and it was pretty straightforward. Everyone does the same kind of treatment. Surgery is the best first thing you do, and then radiation. It's hard for them in in surgery to get it all because it follows nerves. Like, I'm sure it was there. It's in the lacrimal gland, the tear gland, and then that's all right there by like your optic nerve and everything. And so, yeah, you have to do radiation to try and kill the rest, and then from there, we have to just do scans after that to see how uh, how successful it was. With treatment, they say that cisplatin chemo is one of the worst as far as nausea goes. I had nausea, but I never had any vomiting or anything like that. It was just like I'd feel it in my stomach, and then I'd eat something, and then the next day I'd be like, I can never eat that again. And then with radiation, there was like severe exhaustion, and then I put like Aquaphor on my eye, like around my eye, because it started to get really red, and they said you can have skin breakdown if you're not on top of that. And then also just like this chemo doesn't really have hair loss, but the radiation, like my eyebrows leaving, and then I have like these weird hair loss from the radiation as well. But yeah, other than that, I was able to stay pretty active, which for me is important. I continued to work through most of treatment. I did take like 2 weeks off at the end. Just it got hard with how tired I was from the radiation and everything. I mean, my wife was the real hero there because she also works. We both work, and she really took care of basically everything. The kids were just starting school, which after they started school was nice for me because they were gone and I could just rest or whatever. But yeah, just still, I wanted to be a part of their lives. I didn't want to just take that off. So I'd still do as much as I could. And even doctors told me, they said, you can ignore that exhaustion as much as you want. Like you can do as much as you want as far as being active or um, being with your kids. And so we'd take them to the park or to the pool and all that stuff. Just try and keep it as normal as possible, really. But yeah, it's just hard because like I had all my appointments and then my kids have appointments too, and balancing all of that. And then, yeah, our daughter with Down syndrome, she has she just this year she got diagnosed with sleep apnea, and so we've had to see like a cardiologist for her, and then the sleep doctor as well. And so just balancing everything is pretty tough. I finished treatment in the beginning of September. Um, it was it was just good. It felt good to be done. They have like this whole gong that you ring when you're done. They let me keep my radiation mask. um, and it was just, yeah, it's just nice to not have to go in there every day and not feel that exhaustion, which I mean is part of it. And it's important to do the treatment, but just knowing that I'm done and that I can keep going with my life, keep going with everything that I like to do. And um, yeah, it was just, I, I don't know. I can't think of any words to describe it besides just, I was just glad to be done with it. So they have to wait. They said to wait like 3 months, probably for inflammation to go down. And then I'll have scans. I'll have another MRI and everything in November, like the end of November. And then with this kind of cancer, it's the tumors are slow growing, but it's very persistent, is what they told me. So um, every 3 months, I'll have scans for at least a year, and then after that, they go to 6 months or whatever. And if they find tumors elsewhere, then hopefully they can surgically remove them. It's very common for it to spread to the lungs, or it can spread to the liver, just a bunch of different places. So they have to monitor everything really close. It's just and catching it early is the most important thing. Everyone says there's like a scan fear, and for sure, yeah, you want to see that everything's they don't see any signs, especially locally, but also that it hasn't spread. they say keeping the cancer local is the most important thing. But then if it's still there, then treatment options are kind of limited. There's people that have their whole eye removed, or just different things like that. There's not much else they can do for that, unfortunately. Hope is just knowing or believing that good things can happen. And so if I didn't have hope, you just give up. Why? Why go through the treatment? It's difficult. Why do it? There's no, if you don't have any hope of it working. But yeah, for me, it's just, I would tell anyone to just know that I believe that everyone has a purpose, and with that purpose, you can help other people. And so my message is just that if you're going through a hard time, just keep going. Hopefully you have a strong support team. That's been what's helped me the most. And if you don't, then find one because other people can help you a lot. I've had a ton of help from family. My sisters did bake sales to help raise funds, and then obviously just my family here at home. Just I know that they love me, and I love them, and I just know that hope, the hope of continuing to be with them, is what has gotten me through most everything. In nursing school, one of the biggest things they tell you is be an advocate for your patients. Be an advocate for your patients as a nurse. And I would say also be an advocate for yourself. If you feel like something's not right, make sure that you are being heard. That, like, there's a chance when I went to the ER that they wouldn't have done an MRI, and they would have sent me home or said, no, you need to go see an ophthalmologist again. But make sure that you are getting the treatment, the help you need, and that you're not being ignored, that the doctor you see isn't just going through the motions, that the doctor just hears you. And just basically be an advocate for yourself, and make sure that you're heard when you're going through something like this.